Yo, what's up, experts? This your guy Joshua. We back at it again, and on this week's show, man, it's pretty cool. We're talking about some pretty interesting things. I got a good friend of mine, and we're talking about the merits of capitalism or the lack thereof. We're talking about same-sex attraction, where God stands on that, left-leaning or maybe progressive Christianity, and does it hold mustard according to what the Bible calls us to? And so, listen, sit back, think with us, unpack with us. This is a good one. Comment your thoughts. Let me know what you're thinking about the conversations. Let me know of conversations that you would like to see had on the show, and I'll see if I can do my best to facilitate that. And so this is a good one here, Expert Human Pod. Let's get to the show. Yo, what's up, experts? It's your brother Joshua back here with the Expert Human Podcast. Excited to be back on your timeline, on or in rather your algorithm again. But before we get to the show, I want to talk about a cause and just a space that's become increasingly valuable in my life. Since 1949, the United States has observed the month of May as Mental Health Awareness Month. And so, though we are at the end of the month, we gonna show up to the party late, but we showing up, okay? And this is something, like I said, that's become increasingly valuable to me, especially in my 30s. I'm soon to be 40, and just the importance of my own mental health is something that has become increasingly valuable to me with all the different things that we all juggle in day-to-day life, whether you're an employee, an employer, a husband, a wife, single mom, single dad. I mean, you name it. It doesn't matter what role or function that you play in life. All of it is really kind of pulling on your mental faculties. And that's not even including the childhood trauma, snares, experiences that can really inform who you are, both positively and negatively. And so, in this season of my life, I've been really engaged in my mental health. I myself am seeing a therapist, and it has been working wonders for me to really uncover a lot of things that just were brushed under the rug from, years and years of childhood experiences, and even as an adult. And so, with that said, and with May being Mental Health Awareness Month, I want to kick it to a segment that you guys are going to see in the show for the next couple of weeks. This is a dear sister of mine. Her name is Jolanda Brown. She is a registered mental health counselor here in the state of Florida, and she's doing really, really impactful work in the Central Florida area in particular. And she is someone that has been just kind of a, a a bug in my ear to encourage me to go seek out therapy and counseling for all the things that makes my life dynamic. And so I encourage the same for you. Let's go to her. I want you guys to hear a quick blurb from her, and then you can connect with her as well. And then you're going to come back and we're going to get the show started. All right.
Hey, human experts. This is Jolanda Brown. I am a registered mental health therapist here in the great state of Florida. The month of May is a mental health awareness. And so I'm here to just give you some information about myself as a therapist, as well as giving you some insights on some different topics of mental health for the month. So, to start off, I have been in the mental health field for a little bit over 6 years now. I am a registered mental health therapist. I am not fully licensed currently. I am currently working on achieving my license within the next couple months. With being in the mental health and doing it for 6 years, I have a wide variety of areas of expertise, starting with substance abuse, anxiety, grief, sexual trauma, human sex trafficking. Um, the list continues to goes on. It's a lot. One of my expertise, my go to therapy trends is cognitive behavior therapy. I believe that with that, you have your thoughts, your feelings, and your beliefs all wrapped in one. That a negative outcome doesn't have to be the end outcome, it's always a positive within a negative. So, switching our mindsets on how we think of things will help us in the long run. I am currently accepting in person and online virtual sessions. If you are interested, please reach out. My information is at the bottom of the screen that you'll see. I am accepting new clients. I do accept certain insurances. You can see that on the website as well. But please reach out. Let this not be a stigma for you. I want to get started in our first segment, which is words matter. Words are important. What we say, how we say it, it sticks with us. The old saying that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Words hurt, and they stay with us. I am also a faith-based counselor, so I do tend to lean to the word a lot. And with that, the scripture that comes to mind is the power of life and death lies in the power of your tongue. So remember that when you're saying things and what you're speaking over people. I'm reminded I do work with children a lot, adolescents. My youngest client is 2. My oldest client has been 75. So I have a wide range of ages that I do work with. And working with children and just their parents, just remembering that, again, words matter. Speaking life over your children, not, especially with our boys, our young men, um, telling them that they're the man of the house at 5 and 6 years old, it's a little difficult because the man of the house is supposed to take care of the bills, supposed to provide the money, give food. What can a 5, 6, or 7 year old do with that other than make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches? Let's think about what we're telling our kids. And then they carry that for the rest of their lives. Their childhood is gone because they have to take care of the family by any means necessary. So let's think about that when we talk to our kids, even as adults when we have conversations. Your words matter.
All right, that was amazing. Please go connect with my sister, man. You'll see, or you would have seen her link in all of her not only booking information, but her information on how you can connect with her for mental health counseling and those services. I know her personally. Because I know her personally, she's not my therapist. I don't need nobody who knows me personally to know all of the skeletons and where the bodies are at in my life. But since you don't know her, I highly encourage you to connect with her. She's amazing and definitely a safe place for sure. And with that said, we're getting to the show. I can't even remember what episode this is. It really doesn't even matter this more. We back at it. And so, man, I got a really, really good friend of mine to talk about a lot of great ideas, maybe controversial ideas, but we're going to unpack a lot of things. This guy is an anomaly of an anomaly as it relates to not only their personhood, but how, your faith is kind of fleshed out and the level of, I would categorize it as bravery, in terms of how you express your ideas, given who you are, where you come from. And so I'm really happy to have you on the show. We got my boy, I keep wanting to call you Smart. It is Nathan.
It's okay.
Pronounce your last name for me, bro.
Sheer.
Nathan Shear.
Yeah.
I know him as Smart. I just kind of affectionately refer to him as Smarty Pants. But man, bro, thank you for being on, man.
You've got
Yeah.
that's too much. That is too much credit. I'm not a smarty pants in any sense of the word.
I beg to differ. You've said some profound things every now and then. I can
Every
pencil
now and
you
then,
in
thank
for
you.
like 2 to 3 profound statements annually.
Okay, I'll take that.
And
I'll
that's
take that.
enough to qualify you as a smarty pants because you carry
Okay.
it very humbly and meek as well. And so it's
That's a
definitely
pretty
compliment.
low standard, but it is America, so that standard is pretty low.
And that standard is diminishing
Yeah.
by the term.
Gosh. Oh man.
So yeah, man, nah, I think it's just dope to have you on. And I mean that seriously, like, you know, uh, just as a brother, just as a brother of another race, someone who is really like tapped in and thoughtful about social issues, economic issues, issues of faith. You've been, someone who is, ironically enough, like it seems like we kind of stew on some of the same ideas around the same time. I mean, we're going to talk about capitalism, but as over the last, I don't know, 6 months, 8 months or so, as I've been kind of thinking about the merits and the lack thereof of just that system of economy, I'm thinking I'm the only one kind of in my friend group that's thinking about something so kind of nuanced. Was like, why you say, and then literally I see on my timeline, like you just I'm like, oh, this guy's thinking about it too. And it's been like 2 or 3 times where like I would just kind of be sitting in a pool of thoughts trying to examine why I may have a position that I have, or think the way I think about something biblical or societal, whatever. And I would just see you kind of in that same pool. And I'm like, man, it's so crazy that we kind of, share similar streams of consciousness
I
about different things.
I'm 100% sure that what that means is our algorithms are lining up.
You know what?
You know,
You know what?
or I'm seeing your stuff thinking of things and posting my own stuff as a result, or whatever.
You just we both may be living in the same echo chamber.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah, right.
That's crazy. Okay, so I want to like just talk about, because I think it's important before we get into all the deep and heavy stuff, maybe to talk about just kind of who you are, because I like your story, and I found something new out about you like right before starting the show. And so when I refer to you as Smart, it's because that was your like creative name when you
Yeah.
were in the creative space as a rapper. He is a rapper, y'all, and a producer. I don't think I've ever heard you rap before. I've heard your production before.
Well, I did recently send you something that I made.
You did?
When I was, I'm in my late 40s, and so I just had a colonoscopy, got diagnosed with diabetes.
Let's talk about that.
And while I was waiting out, the effects of post colonoscopy, I was like, I'm gonna write a rap again. And so I wrote like a 40-year-old, like a 50-year-old rap or whatever.
Was it about?
It was about having diabetes and like career crisis kind of stuff, midlife stuff.
Is it on Beyonce's internet anywhere where we can find this and maybe put
Yes.
like a little?
If you go, it's not mastered or mixed well at all. It is just I grabbed an old beat from 5 years ago and used AI to like I didn't even have the samples. I don't have the stuff,
Okay.
so I used AI to split it into drums like bass, and then threw that like into GarageBand, and then but yeah, if you go to NathanSmart.bandcamp, I think is on there. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna make sure that's on the screen so people can go and antagonize you online.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned a couple things. First of all, how old are you?
I'll be. I was born in 1978. I'll be
7 years.
well, like 47.
Okay.
This year, or is 48 this year?
Okay.
What's the math on that? What's 2025?
So 7 years. So I got to reverse engineer it. So I was born in 85. So you're 7 years older than me. I'll be 40, which makes you 47.
This is how smart I am. I can't even figure out my own birth.
We both sitting here trying to figure out how. We gonna scratch the capitalism conversation. We not smart enough to have that conversation.
I know, right? Yeah, I'm 47, 48, whatever. One of these numbers.
I mean, obviously, like I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think the average like American age to go get a colonoscopy is like 41, 42.
Okay, so it used to be 50, was like if you never had one before, was like 50.
Mm-hmm.
And then they moved it to 45. But I had some colonoscopies earlier in my life because I had they found some polyps, and they were no cancer or anything. But so then I've had a few earlier on, like in my 30s, I had some. But then they were like, okay, you don't. After like 2 or 3, they were like, okay, you're good. You don't have to do this until the recommended age, which I thought was 50, and then the doctor was like, no, we changed it to 45.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if you are 45, get your anus checked.
I have my mind is still being renewed, so I have so many wicked, evil, just crude jokes
Yeah, sure.
that I'll wait until we cut to
Okay.
crack. But
Cut this.
yeah. So I mean, because and the reason why I ask is I'll be 40 this year.
So you're safe. You got time.
Well, you know,
Unless they moved it. Unless your doctor's saying.
so I like there was an article I read fairly recently where particularly for black men,
Okay.
like they moved the age up to where it was 45, but now I think it's
Oh.
like 40, 42. I could have
Well,
the
that's
exact
white privilege
age.
for you then.
I mean, hey
That's
man, listen, we
extra
catching
years.
the butt end of all of it, literally. And so I've been like honestly over the last year mentally trying to prepare myself for that procedure because I know
So let me say this: the procedure is easy. Yeah, the hardest part is getting if you don't like needles, is getting the
the procedure won't
the
be
line
easy for
in,
me.
right?
It won't be.
it's just getting the line in, right? That's the annoying part. The hard part is the prep because you're drinking this. You're either drinking a really horrible liquid that's hard to keep down,
Mhm.
and then using the restroom over and over again, or I took pills because I hate the liquid, and I had to swallow these horse pills, like 12 of them in like 30 minutes or something. So I'm just
Jeez.
like chugging water, like almost throwing up the water because it is hard to do. But
Okay.
and that's the night before, and then everything else is totally easy. You get the day off from work.
Do they put you to sleep? You go to
relax.
sleep for it?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I gotta.
Yeah. Oh
once
yeah. I
again,
wouldn't do it. I would just like, sorry, I will just not have this done if you don't put me to sleep.
Yeah. No. I
Or I'll
don't know.
come with my own drugs.
Yeah, I don't know why my mind is just so debased right now because even to put me to sleep, I had Diddy jokes and all type of stuff.
Yeah.
We should have prayed more. Before,
Yes.
But like, yeah, I gotta be asleep. I don't want to remember anything. Okay. And so when you came in, I was looking at you like, man, you lost a lot of weight, and so just you. Is it like pre-diabetic or
No,
have you
it's
been
full on. I was like pre like I remember this like a couple years ago, and then I stopped going to the doctor because I was trying to get my weight down because I wanted to get it in diabetes. There's magic numbers called your A1C, and it's
Mhm.
the amount of sugar in your blood, like your blood sugar level, glucose or something, over a 3 month period.
Okay.
Like I think that's how far back it can. Fix this in the comments if I'm wrong, but I think over a 3 month period, like when they test, that's like it's kind of baseline. And so I was trying to lose weight, and I never did. I couldn't ever lose the weight,
Okay.
so I just didn't go because I'm not going back until they can test me.
Is that how I feel like that's how dudes like deal with health issues? Like if I just don't go to the doctor,
Yeah.
it'll just work itself out.
Well, and also like in America, we pay for all this stuff, so like I'm like I can save money if I don't go. So I'm going to the doctor. So then I had horrible health insurance. This company got a new job, great insurance. So I finally went,
Mhm.
and you got diabetes, you have a hernia, and you need a colonoscopy
He's
all
like,
in one go.
Why did I come here?
Yeah.
I was fine until you told me I wasn't.
I was doing great because the doctor was like, "Don't you?" Because the number I had of the A1C, like if you have under 5.7, I think you are no diabetes.
Mhm.
Pre is like up to like 6 point something or something like that. I can't remember exactly. I was at like 8.7, which the doctor said that's the number of someone who has let it go, has let themselves go.
Mm.
So I was like, oh. Uh, so I went home. I cried a little bit. I was like, this sucks. I knew life. My mom had diabetes.
Okay.
And so like I always felt like, oh, it'll happen. But the truth is like she had, I think, type 1. I have type 2.
What's the difference between the two?
Type 1 is like, I think it's more like permanent, like, or you can be born with it.
Okay.
Or, like it's just a different like level of it. Whereas type 2 is one you can manage if you eat correctly with exercise and stuff. You can manage it. I brought my number with no medicine or anything down to almost it saying I didn't have diabetes.
Because that was my next question.
Yeah.
Like, are you taking insulin?
So
Do you
now-
like the I know they have like
Yeah.
the glucose monitor. I've seen that on like people's.
Yeah.
Like, do you have
So
any of
I
that
have-
or?
So I told the doctor that I wanted to see if I could do it with exercise and diet first, and he said he was like reluctantly. He was like, "That's fine if you think you can, because it's hard to do if you like to eat garbage all the time." So like, which I do. I love garbage, and
Don't we all?
yeah.
Yeah.
So then I did it for three. That was the best I've ever eaten in my life. Was like I just ate no carbs, like just little.
I've
things here and
never
there.
seen anyone get online and trash talk diabetes like you do. Like,
It sucks.
this guy is literally in a online beef with diabetes. Like,
It's miserable. It's not fun. Like I'll watch like healthy people can eat like a croissant, in the morning, or like they can eat a nice sandwich with healthy ingredients. Like I can't eat the healthy meals. Like I have to eat. I have to go one step further. So like I can't have like a nice potato, which is like has lots of nutrients and stuff, but that's like poison for diabetes. So yeah. So anyways, like I got my number down. Then next time I went 3 months later, my number went up just a tiny bit. Doctor was like, "Let's get you on some metformin, which is a pill."
yeah.
So I take a pill like twice a day.
Okay.
When I remember, and and that's supposed to like help balance it.
Okay.
Too.
No, you look great though. Like,
Thank you.
Coming in, I know the last time I saw you, which was a few months ago, maybe a little longer than that, like, it was evident that you were heavier. And so just coming in now, you look slim, you look,
Thank you.
energetic, froggy.
Yeah, froggy.
So that's
fresh.
good stuff, man. Good stuff, bro. And so before we started, you were talking about because I was asking you about Smart and the name and your last name and all that. And so rapper,
Yes.
comedian,
Yes.
producer.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about like the comedic experience and like how far you went in that, and
So the I never felt like I was a good rapper, like that I would in a way where I would.
Yeah, I never felt that way either.
Oh, thank you. But I never felt like I did feel like I was a good producer, like I could make a good beat. So I always relied heavily on that. And when I was rapping, if I showed a track to someone, I'd be like, look, I'm rapping, but the beat is what matters. I'm rapping because I can't get anyone else to rap on these things.
I got you.
And I can keep a rhythm, so I can rap fine. It's just I'm not like an MC where you're battling and freestyling and all the sorts of things you expect a guy you'd see on like Sway and going off. Like I can't do that necessarily. So when I was rapping, I oftentimes would do comedic stuff, which is this last song I did. It's more like jokes and just funny rhymes or whatever. Like
Okay.
So that was all part of that. And then when I actually I was doing stand up for about 10 years, but it was like I was an open micer for 10 years, like I just went every week and did it with my friends. And
I always look at like comedians like that's a different type of it takes a different type of guts, because it's just with my experience as a rapper, you can bring a certain level of kind of uncaged energy that helps to settle you.
Yeah.
But as a comedian, you're going up there and you're talking.
Yeah.
And it's like, yo, either what you're saying is resonating and that creates the energy, or not. And so
It's
as
like
a rapper, you can kind of fabricate some energy with your physical, whatever. And so I've always kind of looked at, I've toyed with the idea of like, man, I'll just have some drinks one night and just go up there like at an open mic and just see what happens. But I'm like, yeah, nah, I don't think I'm built like that.
I think a lot of like what they always say is that like musicians wish they were comedians and comedians wish they were musicians. There's like some weird like a crossover that way.
Yeah.
I always look at it as like when I was rapping, it didn't matter if the audience was into it necessarily because the music was happening.
Yeah.
And I could just do the thing, do the song and then do the next one and then get off the stage.
It can be without their participation.
Yeah.
Comedy is like, yo, I need y'all to be laughing for me to feel like what I'm doing is worthy of me keeping going.
Yeah. If an audience is quiet at a rap show, who cares? If an audience is quiet, I mean, well, it's nice if they're not, but if an audience is quiet at a comedy show, it's
bad.
It's definitely it hurts. It hurts.
Have you ever? I mean, you've bombed.
Oh yeah. I had the problem of, and I think a lot of comedians have this problem, is that my first set ever was
Mhm.
maybe one of the best sets I ever had.
Okay.
Right? So the first time I ever did comedy, like I won a little mini competition,
Okay.
and it was awesome. I was like, oh
Now you gassed up.
yeah. And then the next week I bombed completely, and so it was like I was like, oh, I don't like this anymore. Like I was like, this is.
You didn't quit your job after the first set. Did
Yeah, I
you?
was like, oh no. I think it was because one of the reasons was because I thought that you needed to write all new material every week.
Oh, okay, okay.
It would be like making a new album every time you performed.
Were you more? Were you
Yeah.
more of like a dry pun comedian, or was it
So,
like you were more animated? Like, what brand of comedy did you really
well,
engage in?
I always I spent a lot of energy writing stuff that I thought would make the other comedians laugh.
Uh,
That was my favorite thing.
uh,
Because in my head it was a sort of a safety measure where like if the audience doesn't laugh, there's a chance that the audience is not a good audience. There's a small chance, right?
hmm.
That I could be telling good jokes, they're just not into my style of comedy or something like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
But the other comedians, if they're laughing, like they get the wide range of comedy.
Yeah.
They can understand, or because they're in it and that's all they think about. So if I got them to laugh and the audience didn't laugh, it didn't matter to me as long as I got the comedians to laugh. So
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of like meta stuff like doing jokes that were making fun of comedy, making fun of stand up and like
Hmm.
pretending to be a bad comedian or whatever, doing things that just made comedians laugh. And um, it was the same anxiety as any other comedian. So I slowly moved away into doing like sketches and things like that. Whatever I could do to not do stand up,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would try to run into.
I can definitely, I can see that, like it, like within the realm of like your skill set, because you've always been, kind of like a observant pun type of person. Okay, okay, so I think this maybe might be a bridge into where I
Okay.
want to go. I
Yeah.
want to talk about how we got introduced,
Yeah.
which was, kind of uh, almost an arranged friendship type
Yeah.
of
It totally was.
situation where,
Where only one person knew they were being set up.
yeah, exactly. And so, at the time we both were going to the same church,
Yeah.
and it was a predominantly white church, and that was when
Historically white church.
historically white. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
If we say
historically.
historically black, why wouldn't we say historically white?
Yeah, I mean, historically, predominantly, whatever. And so we were at this kind of church function where I think, which I give kudos to some degree, where we, as myself and my family, as it's not that there weren't any black people there,
Mhm.
but I think during that maybe season in the church, they were trying to be more intentional about engaging other black people
Yeah.
that were there and fellowship in it. So we were at this church function. I'm just chilling, unbeknownst to me.
I
The
have been told
Go
that
connect.
hey, yeah, like I'm gonna introduce you to this guy, Joshua, and I was under the impression that he had told you that he was gonna introduce you to this guy named Nathan.
No clue.
No, so I'm just like hovering around this guy because I was like, oh, I thought we were all.
Yeah.
I could tell but I could tell you were just kind of like, who is this freaking guy?
But it wasn't off putting, like you weren't weird about it.
Yeah.
I could just tell there was like a great level of intention. It was like, hey, I want to connect with you. And I'm like, all right, dude, we can connect, but it wasn't off putting. But then once you kind of told me like, oh yeah, the pastor we have similarities and interests and things
Yeah.
like that. I was like, oh, okay, it makes sense. It just what I think is cool about it is that you and I genuinely clicked, as opposed to it just kind of something that felt forced.
Yeah.
But with that, so one of the things that I think, I really just admire about you is at that time I was in a historically predominantly white church, because on my own just kind of faith journey, I was trying to really find a landing place for what I was experiencing in my own walk with the Lord, how I was engaging with the Bible, and how I thought that that should look in
Mhm.
like the fellowship of believers that I was connected to. And so that's what led me there where I met you. But
Yeah.
then you fast forward a few years later,
Yeah.
now I'm back in what is, culturally and, expressionally like more comfortable for me in the predominantly historically black church.
Yeah.
And now you're there.
Yeah.
Which, I know I sent you a clip, and I will. I'm not going to like play the clip and kind of dissect that word for word or anything like that. But one of the things that the clip was about race in the church. It was about
Mhm.
the, pretty much the silence of predominant of the white Christian church as it
Mhm.
relates to matters of race and faith and how those things are intertwined. And one of the things that was highlighted in the clip, which is one of the reasons I was like, man, I gotta have this conversation with Smart, is kind of how that very dynamic where it's like, yo, you do see more crossover of black Christians in white churches
Mhm.
than white Christians in black churches.
Yeah.
And so I want to kind of talk about what your like what was or is what the thought process or the kind of the pulling on your heart that led you to say, hey, I am going to intentionally, like, we're going to this church and it is predominantly black. We're not going to, culturally or, there's going to be more assimilation on you guys in than vice versa.
Yeah.
What kind of brought you to that place and space with you and your
So,
family?
um, like you said, a lot of churches, they really do like the idea of having a diverse um, congregation,
Mm-hmm.
but they aren't really committed to it. This is no shade or whatever, but like they aren't committed to it to the point where they would have like an African American um, pastor,
Mm-hmm.
or like a you know black worship leader or something,
Mm-hmm.
right? They still they want um, people of color to come to their church, but they don't necessarily want to do any changes to the way they worship
Mm.
that would actually bring the diversity to their church.
Gotcha.
And there's like church, in my opinion, a lot of it is like go where you feel fed, go where you feel comfortable, and if like soft worship or like modern worship appeals to you, or the way someone preaches appeals to you, like, and it happens to coincide with your racial makeup, then
Yeah. Yeah.
like whatever, like like that's fine. Like I don't think that's racist to like want to go to a church where there's you know traditionally white expressions or whatever.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
that's your goal in life, is to be only around white people, that's an issue, and
Mm-hmm.
that speaks to racism in some way.
Mm-hmm.
But people are comfortable where they're comfortable, and so like a
Was
lot
it
of
was it was it because maybe I should have asked more so about
yeah
your, because I think maybe your childhood and background and your
yeah
exposure would make you feel inclined to say, hey, I feel comfortable in either
oh
space,
okay,
right?
so yeah,
But and I
I'll
didn't
do that.
ask that question,
Yeah,
but the reason why I'm saying I'm kind of interjecting it now is
yeah,
because was there, when you talk about, hey, based on your race or kind of cultural identification, if you feel comfortable there, like, go with that. Was that a leap for you? It's just like, yo, because in my, okay, so I'm now, this is have a real conversation, because in my mind, I didn't have white friends at all growing up.
yeah,
I grew up in a neighborhood where it was black people.
yeah,
I went to school with predominantly black people. I mean, of course, there were white people there. I seen white people,
yeah,
but like in terms of having proximity and real relationship with people outside of my race and outside my culture, that didn't happen until I was well into my adulthood. And so, because of
yeah,
that, there were a lot of presumptions that I had that were challenged, as I begin to grow relationships with people of other races, was that similar for you, or was like, nah, man, I kind of grew up in those spaces, so there wasn't a real cultural or a leap for me to like kind of
Okay,
assimilate and
so
exist in that world.
I grew up. So if I'll start with just talking about style of church, right? Like
Okay.
I grew up in hardcore Pentecostal churches, right? So these were um, a lot of the same energy that I see in the African American spaces that I'm in now, like
Mm-hmm.
church wise, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot, like speaking in tongues and like, um, sometimes running across the state, like that kind of stuff, like that energy, just
Right.
white people doing it. So a lot nerdier. So like,
On the one and the three, not on
yeah,
the two and
exactly
the
right,
four.
yeah. Um, and so like that I definitely probably I would say helped me in my later years
Mm-hmm.
with this, but also the I grew up listening to hip hop and getting into hip hop music, and as a result getting into black culture through that, the way a lot of white people do, which is through hip hop music,
Yeah.
and through black entertainment.
Yeah.
So I just got submerged in that, like I was just heavily into that, and so I tried to. It didn't work. Like I tried to hang out with the black people at school. They weren't necessarily interested. We would talk about music and stuff, but I also wasn't like into the same stuff because I was pretty um, like I didn't, um, like I didn't hang out with Christians.
Mm-hmm.
I was a Christian, but I mostly hung out with people who weren't.
Okay.
But I never did any of the stuff.
Yeah.
Like I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't swear. I tried not to swear. I didn't do anything. So I didn't
It was a
naturally.
divide just
Yeah,
even there, not
just
even talking about like
it had nothing.
race or
Yeah,
anything like that. It's like, yo,
because there were plenty of white.
convictions and what you believe, like that
Right,
created a
because there were
divide with
plenty
all.
of white people who were just like who were into the same stuff who did connect with them
Mm.
because they were doing this stuff like you would with any.
Yeah, smoking and drinking
Exactly,
and
whatever,
partying and
yeah.
all that type of stuff.
So they would clown on me and stuff like that, but they did, I did have a few friends, but the whole point is like I was so interested, and so up into college, like I would hang out with, like I guess you could say like I wanted to be black, like I in that phase of my life.
Okay.
I don't like to use the word that people use because it's,
You talking
but
about a wigger?
yeah, I don't like to use that word because I feel like it's too close. I don't want to. It's too close.
I can use it.
Yeah. So I was that for a long time.
That's funny. Okay.
And then at somewhere along the line, I realized that I didn't have to be ashamed of who I was,
Yeah,
whether or not I had a critique about my history or whatever.
I got you.
So like, I got comfortable in that, and I no longer wish I was. I wish I was cool, but that's nothing to do with the race.
Yeah, I mean, just
Which is what the truth is. Like at the end of the day, like I wanted to be cool, and the people who were cool at my school
and to be a
were
part
black.
of the culture without having to take on the ethnic
stereotypes.
identities and even the stereotypes.
That's what it was. I was basically just emulating what I thought black people did. So it was
Interesting. Yeah,
so like,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is what a lot of people. That's the main problem with it, is that it's like, yeah,
yeah.
And so all up and through college, and then being in hip hop, like I'm surrounded by lots of people. Now in Christian hip hop, it's not. I don't know what the makeup is racially, but there's a lot more white people in Christian hip hop than there is in regular hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
So it was I still had lots of white friends there, but I had lots of friends of color as a result of that. And so just being a person who is always around that stuff, like it's not been uncomfortable for me to try and hang out with a group of people that I don't know.
And so we got there because the leap from what was your experience in your earlier years in church in terms of, white Christians who had of a charismatic expression.
Yeah.
It wasn't a leap of expression and kind of how those convictions get fleshed out to now say, hey,
Yeah.
now I'm in a black church. Same mode of operation,
Right.
just different skin color, but culturally and
Yeah.
just expressionally, you're like, this is kind of what I'm used to anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, like I had. What's funny is I stepped away from. I'm not necessarily interested in the Pentecostal way. Like I've, um, so it is interesting. And now the church we go to isn't Pentecostal, but there is a lot of connection in terms of expression. You know.
Yeah, for sure.
And so like I remember when the first time I went to Love Center, our church,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the Apostle Genevieve was like, "I hope we weren't too loud for you." And
That is funny.
yeah, and then I said, "Oh no, I grew up in a Pentecostal church," and she said,
Okay.
"Oh okay," like she
Yeah.
knew
So you're
instantly,
used
right?
to this. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So the reason why, right? The reason why, so churches want to be diverse, and they expect that people of color will come to their church.
And assimilate.
Yeah,
That's
right.
that's been my experience.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, because I've gone to, in my Christian life, I've gone to 3 predominantly white churches, Baptist, conservative, reformed, whatever the
Yeah.
denomination is. And what I always like appreciate about the black church experience versus what the my white church experience had been was kind of what you alluded to, where Apostle came to you and was like, "Hey, I hope we weren't too loud for you."
Yeah.
That's really a gesture of like,
Yeah.
it's a gesture of like, it's a gesture of accommodation
Yeah, absolutely.
that I think black people, at least in my experience in the black church, are more inclined to. Because when I've gone into white places and spaces in the church context, it's the thoughtfulness of accommodation isn't as overt. It's just like, yeah, this is what we do. And so I remember, there's always, I think, the idea of whiteness, because I don't even really believe in like the idea of whiteness or blackness for that matter.
Yeah.
As controversial as it may be, I know I am a black man based on contemporary American like identifying markers, but I'm an African American.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
right.
you are a European, whatever.
Yeah.
Like whatever your ethnic
A
background
West
is.
Virginian American.
Yeah, whatever. And so, but the idea that's constructed around whiteness is that it's kind of acultural, where it's like, well, if you come,
Yeah.
we want diversity. If you come here, like, this is just like that. There isn't a bend, there isn't a
Well, 'cause
language,
white-
there isn't an expression, there isn't. And I'm like, guys, I have to assimilate. I have to kind of.
It's because white people, it is assumed white culture is assumed to be the normal culture.
Yeah.
Right. So like, this is, if you come to our church like and you don't like it, then, then you need to go find a special church.
Yeah, it's there isn't baked into that presumption that, oh, there is a way that we do things that you may not identify with. Where in the black church, kind of to the point that you're apostle, like, yo, we know that there are ways that we do things that are kind of baked into our cultural expression that may not be what you're accustomed to, and at least there's like an acknowledgement of that, and then a gesture to say, hey, is it, like, it's not too loud, or what did you think about the service today? Like, you know what I'm saying?
And with, so to go back to like why, right? Like, I had done there's an organization called Be the Bridge, and their whole mission is bridge building between white and black people, and there's a element of it that is religious. Like that's like it can work, however, but it does come from religious viewpoint. So a lot of it is church language, and it's in order to be a part of this Facebook group that I wanted to interact with. If you were white, you had to go through I think everyone had to go through it, but it's definitely directed towards educating white people on race, the history of race, and racism, and it's like
Interesting.
a long list of like articles to read, podcast series to listen to, stuff like that, YouTube videos.
Wow.
Super cool, super interesting, really enlightening. Like I like you know, I'm a person who has like been sensitive to this for a while, and there's tons of stuff I learned about, you know.
Yeah.
And so part of that is then at the end kind of like, well, what are the things that white people who want to build bridges in the church can do? What can they do to help with this? Because a lot of the onus is put on to white people to try to rectify this problem. Because one, a lot of black people are tired of trying to educate white people, and
True.
there's fatigue.
True.
Now they also have like small groups and stuff that are for people of color,
Mm-hmm.
and then they have ones that are just for primarily for white people, but they would be led by a person of color. Like there's all these like kind of
Wow.
like levels to this. It's really interesting, really cool. Anyways, so some of the things are what can you do, and a lot of it, and one of the big ones on there was black people are always expected to diversify white churches, but white people are never asked to diversify black churches or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like part of it was like going like, you know, quote unquote humbling yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is I hate that language, but there is a in our hierarchy of whatever, like to go and take on a black leader as a mentor and as like serve them
Yeah.
is in a way a sense of humbleness in terms of like, you know,
I-
the
I-
power structures.
I
You know
get.
what I
I
mean?
get with the implications of
Yeah.
like what they're leaning into. I mean, I wouldn't use the word humble yourself.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I get it.
I hate the
but I
terminology,
do.
but it's part of like it's just because of the systemic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
yeah.
these are the language that makes the most sense. But yeah, like I don't consider myself like, oh, you know, like
Yeah.
I don't need this, but I will come.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
not
like
that.
I'm doing you a favor.
Yeah, exactly. No,
I'm
not at
like,
all.
no,
It's like
definitely.
seriously, it's just like having black influencers in your life, like and not social media, but like you
Yeah.
know, like people who like are leaders and like because like I'm primarily in a system where most of the leaders are white, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and so like going and finding it just opens up like all kinds of awesome things in your life to have.
That was
like,
one of my
you know,
questions to
all
you.
the stuff.
Like, were there unique insights that you feel like you've gained from being a part of the black church that you wouldn't necessarily
huge
have
one.
gotten? Talk to me about that a little
a huge
bit.
one. I grew up, like it's like I always hated the kind of like this is gonna sound like I'm making some accusation about the black church, but it's not. Like I always grew up hating the kind of word of faith, like like if you do these things, then God will make you rich or whatever.
Mhm.
Like and I've always been opposed to. I was always opposed to it. So even like a whiff of it
Mm-hmm.
would turn me off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in what I noticed in my experience in this black church, and in a few that I've been to, is that there's a lot of self help that's part of the sermons,
Yeah.
part of the like weekly meetings, and it's a
Mhm.
lot of like building up, right? Building up your community, building up yourself, paying off your debts, like building your business, like lots of like financial stuff that's just good wisdom, you know.
Yeah.
And initially, and with an angle of like also making sure you tithe, right? Because
Yeah.
that, which you know, I fully am invested in. And at first, that started hitting my alarm bells of like, oh no, is this
A man-centered type
yeah,
of
is this like if you do these things, God will bless you?
Yeah.
And I always feel weird about that. So what I come to realize is like, no, this is like as like when I would go to church, like I didn't necessarily need the church like to help build up my like I don't know like
I know the train of thought that you're going.
yeah, like I didn't need the same kinds of things that I'm
Mhm.
noticing are like in a historically oppressed group of people who are dealing with trauma and stuff that I
Yeah.
never had to deal with.
Yeah.
That there's a level of like counseling and all that kind of stuff that's in here that like that comes with the respect of the person teaching you these things. And like,
Yeah.
there's lots of stuff like that that I always took for granted that now I'm seeing as really beneficial.
Yeah.
And also like the respect for authority, that I've always been a person that questions authority, and I still do. I never want to, like,
You're a
just,
contrarian.
yeah, and not as a troll or something, but like because I want to make sure that I'm not being tricked or something, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But there's a level of respect that I lost, which is just the that normal respect, like that real respect that you have for someone who's a good person and a great influence on your life. That like that I notice a lot of people in the church are very respectful of the leaders, like in the like, and that's a respect that I've started to feel more of, like
Hmm.
it's just at a different level than that. Like now, if Pastor Greg says something I disagree with, I'm not like, whatever you say, Pastor. Like, um, but it with that respect comes an examination.
Yeah,
Like, oh,
yeah.
okay, I respect what he's saying.
Uh-huh.
I may not disagree, but like, what is it? What is it? Maybe
Yeah.
maybe I would agree if I took some time into it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff like that. These are just little things that like are, every church is different. This is just specifically in what I've been in. And
No, that's a wonderful insight, because it's something that, I mean, I haven't really had the opportunity to kind of lean into that, but I have had like a small handful of conversations where, and it's something I've thought about even myself personally, because I'm very much like you in terms of that kind of tenet of the word of faith and prosperity gospel,
oh
where
yeah,
it's like, yo, our faith in Jesus advantages us in this life in these particular ways,
right.
like equally so to the salvation of our souls. I'm like,
Yeah,
no, the cross is for this. The
yeah,
cross, and
sure.
out of this, and this new birth, and what the light helps me to see about the world I live in, there are
Yeah,
advantages of me seeing principles and having a level of emotional maturity and discipline
yeah,
that lend itself to prosperity and blessing. But that's not a direct cause of the cross. It's more of a byproduct of it. But to your point, like, there in the black church, there is a emphasis there has on just like the practicalities of the life here and now. And like
hmm
when you when you responsibly, and I think maybe even faithfully kind of draw the line to why that is. One, the gospel, you look at Jesus in the gospels, like he does address people where they're at, and speaks to the need that most resonates with them. And
hmm
so, like, to a historically oppressed, systemically oppressed people,
hmm
like, hey, the thoughts around how my faith should impact my credit score is relevant to us. How my faith should
yeah,
impact how I manage my money is relevant. The thoughts of how my faith should, influence my professional dealings, because these are all things that I don't want to say we were robbed of, but that there was a lot of intention in making sure that our exposure to the information was limited. And so, I remember listening to a teacher years and years ago, and he was referencing one of John Piper's books and sermons, like "Don't Waste Your Life," where it's like, yo, just why are you worried about money? And you give your life to the Lord. It's all for the kingdom. We're living for the next life, which is all true, but that's all. Also, there's a lot of privilege
hmm
baked into that, where it's like, I would love to just not think about this life. Like, I would love to be born into a position, and white people get kind of little finicky when you say the word privilege, because they think that it just denotes like someone giving something to them,
yeah,
as opposed to like a position on the social ladder.
right,
Like, that in itself is privilege. Like, yo, I would love to have the privilege of not having to overly concern myself with systemic issues and things like that. And so when I
Yeah.
come into the faith, my faith, if it's a full faith that's concerned with my whole life, it addresses all of that. And there are other issues, I think, in whether it's white church, black church, Asian church, Hispanic church, where there is a practical societal issue that's emphasized as an outpouring of their faith, and it
Yeah.
can be different, depending on the ethnic group that you're talking with. And so it doesn't dilute the gospel. It's just really an outpouring of how the gospel interacts with this part of my existence and my
Yeah.
reality. And sometimes that's a great, because when you're on the outside looking in and you never give yourself the opportunity to sit in and see, like, why does this preaching teaching have this been this way,
Yeah.
but you don't sit in this with us.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay, now I get it, right? But when you live in kind of a echo chamber where, like, it's just your thoughts, your point of views, your perspective, your experiences that inform how you even see the gospel fleshed out, it can be very limited. And that's on both sides.
Yeah.
It's not just like a white thing. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, this is just admittedly, like, I had a lot of presumptions about the white church that I was completely wrong about. And the Holy Spirit really had to do a work on my heart in terms of some of the presuppositions I came into the white church with. Like, I'm assuming, somebody in here gonna say something racist, like, hey, what's your motive? But then, just throughout I mean, I was almost getting ready to say, like, I got 5 white friends. But the fact of the matter is, I have been blessed with a handful of relationships that really challenged a lot of my broad stroke, presuppositions, not just about white Christians, but about white people in general, where the same generosity of rule I want applied to black people and the black experience, if I was going to be a believer in terms of, like, not having partiality, but being open to giving everyone the same playing field to individually kind of prove who they are as a person. Like, I want that for myself and all black people. Like, I was forced to be like, I now have relationships with enough white people to justify that what I may have thought was the rule for all may just be exceptions, just like it is in the black community.
I told you this when we were first hanging out, because you had said that you'd never met a white person like me, and it made me laugh because where I'd come from, Columbus, Ohio, I mean, all my friends were like this. Like, all my friends thought these things, Like, we would have, like, disagreements on things here and there, but most of my
So
friends
you're
were
saying
like,
Columbus, Ohio is the Wigger capital
I don't
of
mean.
America?
I mean, like, I would
Shout
say,
out to Columbus,
yes.
Ohio, and all of my Wiggers.
Ohio State. No, it was like the church I went to happened to be filled with a lot of people who were more liberal leaning and things like that, who were more open to the conversations of race. Now back then, these conversations weren't happening to such a pinpointed degree as they are now, after George Floyd and all the new, not new, but all the stuff coming out of colleges is now hitting just normal conversations.
Yeah.
But before then, like, a lot of my friends all, like, I went to go back to visit, and coming from here in Brevard, one of the reddest counties in the country, I'm assuming, and then going back up to Columbus, Ohio, to visit, and like, seeing all of the street signs, like the yard signs of, like, all the, like, very progressive, like
Okay, okay.
all like, it felt like, I was like, wow, like, the North it has just as much racism, or can have as much racism as the South, but the pockets there are bigger of people who are supportive, and so it felt like, oh man, I wish I could transplant this down,
Yeah.
into these like dark holes that we're in.
I was joking with you. That because you were, at the height of the BLM movement, you had the the decal on your car, like the Black Lives Matter. And I remember joking with you, like, bro, you want to get a brick thrown through your windshield driving around here with that Black Lives
You know,
Matter.
like I got like Meredith swears, my wife swears that people harassed her, and I have no reason to not believe her. Um, but I did. Someone did say something one time at a gas station, but for the
Okay.
most part,
A white person or a black
a
person?
white person.
Okay.
But for the most part, like, I mean, I don't know. I'm not. Maybe I'm not paying attention in the car enough,
Yeah.
so maybe
Yeah.
people were beeping or whatever, and I wasn't.
Ju- Just frowns,
Yeah.
just frowns and looks of
Yeah.
disdain at the
Well,
stoplight.
what was your what did your grandma or someone who like came out that
Oh
one time? That was funny.
yeah, yeah, yeah. My grandma, who is this white person?
That was funny.
Nah, man,
She
good
said what
stuff.
she said. She was like, "Well, you tell him Black lives do matter."
Yeah, yeah, for sure,
Like, is
grandma.
like, is he like joking or something? Like,
No, I mean, I'm telling you, bro, you've been a very awesome anomaly, man. Okay, so with that said, I think we've kind of talked race and church enough for now. So
yeah.
listen, we're going to take a break. We're going to shoot over to one of our segments here. Let's go to There's Hope with our good brother Dallas Franklin, and then come right back. We're going to continue the conversation.
What's going on, my expert human family? This is your There's Hope segment for this week. By the way, it's good to see y'all. Let's jump right into it. So, Isaiah 26, verse 3 talks about, you know, God will keep those in perfect peace whose mind is fixed on Him because they trust in Him. You know, our mental health, our mindsets, our emotional health, our everyday practices, all of these things mean a lot. It shapes our days, it shapes our weeks, it shapes, our lives, our relationships. So it's important for us to prioritize it. And I want to specifically speak to our mental health and our mindsets. It's important that we take care of it. I know sometimes we can get so busy working, so busy with school, so busy just with the obligations of life that we neglect to prioritize our mental health. Listen, a huge part of that is us fixing our mind. That verse says, those whose mind is stayed on Jesus, stayed on God. That's an action that we must do. We must place or prop up or prioritize our mental health, our mindsets, and fix it on God, on His goodness, on the joy that comes with knowing Him, on our confidence in His ability to do all that He says He's going to do, and His ability to be to us who He say He is, which is faithful, compassionate, merciful, gracious, all those beautiful attributes of our Father in heaven. So this week, I want to challenge you to prioritize fixing your mind, meditating on it, propping your thoughts on the goodness of God because you actually trust in Him. There's a connecting part. In order to fix our minds, in order to have a healthy mentality, in order for us to really prioritize our mental health, we really have to trust in God. I think that's something that is easily um, left out, that part of mental health is trusting God and His ability to keep us, to take care of us, and to give us that peace that we need. So, this week, my expert human family, I want you to prioritize your mental health and your mind by fixing it on God and His Word. Anyways, as I always say, no matter your past and no matter what you're facing in the present, always know there's hope.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. We're still here with my good friend Nathan Smart. We're just gonna call him Smarty Pants. Smarty Pants. And so before we went on break, we were talking about just kind of issues of race in the church and so forth. I do want to have you back to kind of continue that conversation because there's some other things I want to discuss. But I want to pivot to something that maybe it's going to be kind of a filling out ground for me. I want to talk about capitalism.
Yeah.
Because you was posting some stuff. Like I said, I've been thinking about it. I've been doing a little reading. Because I don't have a system of economy in mind that um, that I feel is on its merits better than capitalism based off my limited knowledge at this point.
Yeah.
So don't call me a Marxist. Don't call me a socialist. I am a capitalist.
I always say the main reason why I'm not like a communist or a Marxist,
A communist, thank
or a
you.
Marxist, is because there's just too much reading. I can't do all this reading.
And I'll be honest with you, I'm just now dipping my toe into it. I'm like, yo, this is a lot. And so I'm, big audiobook guy. So I listened to a book like 2 weeks ago called Why Socialism.
Mm-hmm.
I walked away from the book like I have no idea what this is talking about.
The thing is, there's like, if you go into like I'm in a couple of circles online where I'm just there because I want to hear people say, and there's so much infighting between communists and Marxists and like different levels of socialists, and like what I consider myself is like a socialist Democrat, which is different than a democratic socialist.
Talk
right?
about that. Talk about that. Because I have a critique of capitalism, but my critique hasn't fully formed into the landing place that I would give myself.
So in the for the sake of time, like there's like these levels where like I think I'm gonna be wrong and someone's gonna correct this. But like communism is kind of like the ultimate goal for this group of people, which is like, and then the levels before that is like socialism, which is like the means of production owned by the workers,
Mm-hmm.
and then the ultimate would be that there is no state whatsoever. The communism just functions without any. I don't 100%. I'm getting this wrong, I know, but democratic socialism.
Y'all kill him in the comments too.
Just
kill
take
him,
me down.
fillet him.
Democratic socialists are more like they recognize that they hate capitalism, but they recognize that we can't have it at this exact moment. So we're working within this framework through voting and all these sorts of things. Whereas like communism is more revolutionary, where things will be, potentially violence, all that kind of stuff. Like there's way more stuff going on there. Again, I'm probably wrong, but then socialist Democrats, which is what I am, is really like, I'm okay with capitalism when it comes to like making like a watch or whatever, you want to make your computer, whatever. I just think it should be heavily regulated. And I think we should give free healthcare, and we should have free college, and we should have free food, and like whatever we need to help people who are in need. But like I'm happy to have whatever system we have as long as it's regulated to the gills, so that people are not being hurt by it. If I felt comfortable enough with it, I would just say screw capitalism and whatever we can have next. But I'm a baby, so.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I definitely plan on educating myself more about. I have some books kind of in my cart on Amazon that I'm going to get and read. But just like on its face, as I was thinking, and this kind of piggybacks on the conversation about race and how race affects class. And to me, as a Black American, as an African American, at this age and stage of the country that we live in, let me back that statement up. Based on the founding realities of the country that we live in, capitalism never has and does not advantage African Americans as much as other social groups in America. What I understand about capitalism,
well, it favors the people in power.
It favors the people in power,
which so it would make sense then. Whatever race is in power, like, right?
Exactly. And so, I mean, and just kind of bare bones, like, I'm like, yo, capitalism works best when, you have capital already to deploy for the purpose of gaining more capital. It's like those who when they say like the rich get richer, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, there's a reason for that, because
Yeah.
the rich, they have the capital, they have the assets to deploy to acquire more assets
And
and
less is at
capital.
stake. If a business goes down, they'll
Yeah,
just
and then at
bankrupt,
some
fold
point
it.
you
Who
do,
cares?
at some generationally that happens enough, then said entity becomes too big to fail, and then
Yeah.
so for black people who were systemically, restricted from access to capital, access to home ownership, and then
Mm-hmm.
when you talk about just free labor and generating,
Yeah.
capital for 200 years, it's
Yeah.
like now this idea of like meritocracy, where it's like, yo, everyone, but like it's not all equal, because
Yeah.
you got all the power and the capital right now
Yeah.
already. And so now to deploy both of our merits in a free enterprise system where all the capital and the power you already obtained it, how does capitalism benefit me? I mean, there are outliers who are able to kind of climb the ladder, and but like they are definitely outliers and not the rule. And so for me, and then even I wanted to, like, when I even think about, like, biblically, how capitalism, I think, structures and wires a society, I'm like, I don't even think, as a Christian, like, even if the playing field were like quote unquote level and
Mhm.
meritocracy was like a real thing, I'm like, biblically, I don't even know if that, I'm not saying this is like I'm not trying to build a theology around this. I'm just
Yeah,
kind of
sure.
saying, like, I've seen some things in the Bible, and just based on what I see about God's heart, I'm like, I'm not sure if this is even a system of economics that lends itself to all human flourishing, right? And so, one, capitalism kind of incentivizes greed,
Hmm.
selfishness, individualism, where it's like, yo, as long as I get to the top, it doesn't matter who else
Yeah.
I have to step on to get there. And I was looking at, when this
I
is
mean, that's why they say, like, the whole thing about should there even be billionaires, right? Like, if you
yeah,
are a billionaire, it's
I
almost impossible to not have exploited someone to get to that point.
I don't really see the merits in their being billionaires in the world.
Yeah.
Like, because at some point, let's just say through chance or just someone's vigorous moral compass, they don't squash any little people to acquire that $1 billion,
Right.
right? But what good? But when you have nations of people in poverty, and one person who, I mean, we can go down the list of the top 20 richest people in America, where it's like, yo, these people have more capital than the GDP of entire countries that don't have health insurance, rampant poverty, sickness, disease,
Hmm.
healthcare, all that. It's like, how does this benefit just the world for this one person to have accrued all this money when there's so much human, suffering and lack? And I know that can maybe come off a little utopic and just kind of, but I'm like, yo, from a Christian perspective, this is solely a
Yeah.
Christian perspective. I'm like, yo, I don't see how that system benefits all of humanity outside of those who acquire all the money and all the power, and
I mean,
they sit in that
the
seat.
Bible is like very clear on its thoughts on, you know, the way the income gap kind of things. Like, it's very clear that the poor are the most important. The least of these, the last shall be
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
Everything is taking care of the poor, widows, orphans, refugees, all this kind of stuff, right? And anytime that there's talk of rich people in the Bible, there's usually a story to be learned
Right.
from whatever they're up to,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And it's just like, if like what, like, it's just whatever.
Let me read,
Yeah.
because this is one of the things that really kind of informs my utopia of just ideas. So this is Acts chapter 2, verse 44 through like 47. So this is, after, Jesus, he's already ascended. This is the church forming, and it says, And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. This is the church and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and prayer. And all came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. Check this out. And all who believed were together and had all things in common, and they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. I'm like, yo, that's the system of economy that is most Christ-like.
All right.
Now, I am the problem too,
Yeah.
because
Well, you live in so we live
I'm
in
a product.
society.
I am
We
a
live in
product
it.
of
Yeah,
yeah.
and we can only live in the way that we're allowed to live. Like we can't live in we can't live in a utopian socialist society because we don't have that form of government.
Mm-hmm.
So all we can do is, that's why people go off and they start these communes, because they want to do it, and it's hard, but they want to do that. And anyways, I feel the same way. Like I do all the same consumer stuff that's
Yeah.
dumb and selfish and all the same stuff, but it's like
There would have to be a great deal of unwiring in me, because I'm all about the markets and
Yeah.
advantaging myself as much as I possibly can, and getting all the money and then having all the comforts and all the splendors.
But this is why another reason why these systems are so corrupt is because they force us to be the people we don't want to be.
yeah.
Like I have to grind out trying to get freelance design or whatever, which I'm the worst at finding. But like I need it. I need that money. So like I'm always trying to figure out how to work instead of like hanging out with my family more or whatever I want to do, or like pursuing art, or worshiping, or whatever I want to do, instead of having to do more design or something. And like it's I'd rather live a life of like these people, where they all lived in community together and they supported one another and loved the Lord. Like it sounds great.
Yeah.
Sounds
yeah.
like heaven, like what would heaven would be, right?
It's a part of it that sounds like heaven, and then also, even as I'm reading it, like this is an ideal. This is an ideal, and it sounds like heaven. But then also, there's still this, it's in me where I'm like, but yeah, I just want my stuff though.
Well, yeah, I still want to play video games. Like, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, I still want to own a video game system.
Yeah. So let me read this one other verse, because to me this kind of gets to the same to the same idea. This is the Gospel of John, chapter 19, verse 25 through 27. I just think it's just kind of interesting. So this is Jesus on the cross. So verse 25 says, "But standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved, John, standing nearby, Jesus said to his mother, 'Woman, behold your son.' Then he said to the disciple, 'Behold your mother.' And from that hour, the disciple took her to his own home." To me, like I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, that's Jesus's life insurance plan for his family. And I'm like, yo, like once again, that's an ideal, and maybe my imagination is reading a lot into that. But I'm like, yo, okay, so this is biblical life insurance right here. It's like, hey man, we're all a part of the fellowship. Like, yo, when I pass, take care, make sure that the brethren, the sisters, the fellowship is like, yeah, I don't know. That's I don't know. Like that's just so idealistic that is almost unrealistic.
But the problem is that we get so worried about having like utopian ideas that because those seem far-fetched, that we don't pursue the basic ones. Like having a universal healthcare system, which the rest of the world has. Like that's not a dream or something. Like that's real. Like we've seen the benefits of it in other countries, and it's better. It's better than ours. It's cheaper and it's affordable, and people don't go bankrupt because of healthcare. Like
Give me an example of a country that has universal health care and it's working.
so like okay, so basically any European country. Now they have issues in the
Mhm.
same way that we do. Their issues just revolve around different things, right? But they don't revolve around people dying because they can't afford to care, going bankrupt because they can't afford care. They're not, there's like a certain standard of care that doctors are rewarded with meeting.
Mhm.
Like in England, if you can, this is I'm sourcing some of this stuff from an old documentary, but like there was a time where if you got people to stop smoking, you could get extra money, and
Mm.
there's things like that, like these are just there's places that people do it, and they do it, and we can do it. Canada does it. They're right next door. We
Mm.
can do what they do. They have single payer, right?
Why?
And
Why do you? What is the? So do you feel like the Affordable Care Act was an effort in that direction,
it
and why? And,
was, but
and
it
why?
got
Why
watered
isn't there
down.
any motivation
So
for that?
initially, it did have a public option on it, right? Which would
Mm-hmm.
have been basically like Medicare for all, right?
Right.
But then, just like always, one of the Democrats, Lieberman, I think,
Mm-hmm.
didn't vote. Said he wouldn't vote for it if it had the public option.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that ruined it. Like Democrats always do. They ruin our party. And
You consider yourself a Democrat?
no, I'm not a registered Democrat. I vote for Democrats because that's who's available. But
Mm.
I'm not a Democrat because I just think they're just not a good. They're just not effective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there really isn't a party that I can sign up for that isn't past what I am or that flows with what I feel.
Gotcha.
So I'm just not affiliated. But anyways, like I think like the reason why we don't have it is because there's just not enough goodwill. Like there's not enough, like people
Mm.
don't want it. Like people get mad about saying like, well, I like my insurance company. I wouldn't want to lose my insurance company. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Have you ever met anyone who truly liked their health insurance company?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's not a real person except the person who works there. Like the CEO. Like
Yeah.
um and it's like I just people hate this system. They complain about it all the time. This is what happened when I was a teacher. Teachers would complain about the system all the time, and then they would vote for the people who were ruining the system.
Yeah. 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 So I last year I read Promised Land, which is Obama's memoir after
Okay.
he got out of office, and so he talked a lot about um, the the challenges of getting the Affordable Care Act passed,
Yeah.
and kind of that Medicare for all system, and just the different gamesmanship that it
Yeah.
took to like get it passed in the House and the Congress to get it to his desk, and really him campaigning to people like, hey, kind of to your point, like people being upset about losing their insurance payer, but it kind of goes back maybe a little bit, I don't know, to the capitalism thing where it's like, hey, you're not willing to flex and make a change for the benefit of all.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, that we're making changes that in the short term may appear or maybe even actually be inconvenient to you, but it benefits the nation and the well-being of people overall, and just kind of the unwillingness of people to even flex a little bit
It's
for something that would kind of broad stroke bring value and
yeah.
care to
And
everybody.
and I don't mean that people are dumb or something, but there's an ignorance, like a miseducation or whatever about it. Like you hear things like, well, I shouldn't have to pay for someone's health care.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like you are on an insurance plan where everyone chips in money to this insurance plan to pay for everyone's health care. You do that. That is functionally what health insurance
Yeah.
is paying for other people's care, including your own. So why not just have one insurance company across
Yeah.
the entire country that we
Mm-hmm.
all pay into? It's the same thing. It's just one
Hmm.
big one. But anyways, like there's just a lot of like things like that where people just don't know. They're scared. Like people think, like people talk about like um these European countries, like they're like hellscapes or something. Like,
I feel like I
it's
hear
like,
Switzerland a lot when it comes to like this healthcare stuff
yeah.
in like
So
universal
basically, the
healthcare.
Scandinavian countries, like there's something called like Scandinavian like economics or something, which is like the Scandinavian model, which is something really interesting, which is would be my proposed economic system, which is basically like it's capitalism, but your needs are met and
Mm-hmm.
everything's highly regulated there. Like, like there's great worker protections, like there's great support for the poor and for senior citizens or whatever, like the marginalized. And like it is like um, some of the biggest like healthcare companies in the world are in these countries. So like it doesn't kill business to have
Yeah,
these things. It
yeah,
just makes it harder to get exploited, which is should be everyone should be happy about.
yeah. Because even like the cost of the pharmaceutical industry and the cost of medications are so exorbitantly high here in the states versus that same medication in other
Yes.
countries because they know that they can kind of monopolize the healthcare
They
system
have price
here.
controls and stuff
Yeah,
like that. And
yeah,
it's because they're like, yeah, because they should, because people shouldn't die because they can't have, so it's healthcare. So that is a benefit to them to see, like in France, like there's rules like your boss can't email you outside of your work hours.
hmm.
Like they have like rules to that kind of level of like protection, worker protection, where it's like, no, we want you to be able to have a separation from your job. Where in America, it's like, if you're working 40 hours, like that's a great job.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like if most of us are working more, or whatever,
Hmm.
like, and not getting paid for it or whatever, because we're salary and we're exempt from overtime rules,
Hmm.
we're not able to be in unions or whatever thing that's ruining our lives.
Yeah.
But
So you heard it here first. Nathan Sure, how say that?
Nathan Shear.
Nathan Shear for president 2029.
God, no.
Begin to cash your early
No way.
mail-in ballots now. All right. Listen, we're gonna go to Words for Nerds. We're coming right back, man. And we're gonna continue this conversation as we think through and solve all of the world issues. When we come
Yes.
back, we have solutions to worldwide poverty. And you heard it here on the Expert Human Podcast, man. We'll be back. Yo, what's up, experts? It's that time again. This is my favorite segment on the show right now. It is Words for Nerds. You already know what time it is. Let's get wordy. All right. And this week's word for you nerds out there is dispassionate. Dispassionate. What this word means, it means to be free, to be free or unaffected by passion, devoid of personal feeling or bias, impartial, and calm. That's what dispassionate means. Dispassionate. That's what dispassionate means. It means to be free or unaffected by passion, devoid of personal feeling, bias, you're impartial, you're calm. This is a good word to use for someone who does not seem to be moved by a given circumstance or scenario. I'll give you an example, a real life example, actually. I have a tree nut allergy, which is different from a peanut allergy. Peanuts grow out of the ground, tree nuts grow on trees. And so while taking my boys to the barber shop this week, there is a donut and kind of like a breakfast store right next to the barber shop. And I went in there, it was early in the morning. I bought a muffin, which what I thought at the time was a cranberry muffin because I like cranberries. I purchased that muffin. I purchased some coffee. I drunk that coffee. I ate a portion of that muffin, only to find out that that muffin has walnuts in it. And so immediately when I begin to feel my allergies kick in as a result of eating that nut, we got an issue. So I go back to the clerk at that store and I ask that clerk, hey, does this cranberry muffin have nuts in it? And she gave me a very dispassionate response. Yes. I didn't appreciate the response, but it was what it was. that was a very dispassionate demeanor and response to what was something very serious happening in my body at that moment. That's a good example of not only the context or the usage of the word dispassionate, but how that plays itself out in a real life scenario. Listen, go into your week this week, implementing this word into your vocabulary. Write it down on the index card, on a sticky note, put it in your car, find a way to squeeze it in the conversation. I'm sure that at some point throughout your week, you will have an opportunity where someone will give a very dispassionate response, demeanor, or sentiment toward whatever's going on in your life. And you want to be able to use that word when it's appropriate. All right, there we go. Dispassionate. Let's get back to the show. All right, yo, words for nerds. Listen, hopefully you're not being engaged with any conjecture here on the podcast. We are trying to have conversations fueled by facts, data, experience. We are anti conjecture. Anti conjecture. And so we're back here. We still got Nathan, man. So, yo, would you consider because conversations that we've had, even though we agree on a lot of things, we really disagree on a lot of things too.
Yeah.
Would you consider yourself, or even this terminology, like a progressive Christian?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I consider myself to be progressive in most of my thinking, like politically and in my theology, but I don't know if there's a specific term for what I think, but
And maybe I'm
I
coming
think
up
that
with a
covers
term.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and because for me, even when I say that, when I think, progressive politics and ethics, it's normally oriented around, um, things like healthcare. Somebody
Yeah.
could throw that in there.
Yeah.
Um, the 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 whole idea, excuse me, the idea of uh, body autonomy and someone's right to choose,
Yeah.
as it relates to termination of life. I would also
That's a
say,
loaded term.
yeah,
Just kidding. Go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah,
Just go
it
ahead.
is. I will also include in that. I think I already said politics. I will also include in that how one feels about gender politics and identity
Yeah.
and same-sex attraction, things of that nature. All of those things to me kind of like encompass a progressive disposition.
Yeah, I think everyone defines it however they define it. Like I would have considered myself a progressive before I became affirming, for instance, or before I became pro-choice. Even though progressives of then would have said I wasn't. You know,
Okay.
but it's just how whatever issues you like. To me, it's like, what are the issues? Are you progressive on this issue? Are you progressive on that issue? Because I might be conservative on a certain issue, and
So I mean, and so this is, I know we're kind of like you and I. We've had a lot of robust conversations. One of the last ones, we were in the parking
Best
lot
Buy.
of Best Buy for like 2 hours, going back and forth.
Which was a coincidence that we saw each other. It's like an hour away.
Yeah, yeah. I
a-
mean, and then we see each other an hour away from where we live,
Yeah.
and then we're in the parking lot for like an hour and a half or something like that, just kind of talking back and forth about pro-choice and
Yeah, yeah.
all that type of stuff and pro-life issues. And so, so I really I have respect for how at least thoughtful you are about your positions, even though I disagree with them. But
Yeah.
my question to you is like, because how do you reconcile, I think, maybe more traditional interpretation and Christian
Mhm.
values versus where you feel you land on issues of, you know, sex,
Yeah.
um, life, things like
Yeah.
that.
So it's tricky because, like I was raised like any other Christian in America, right? That homosexuality was one of the worst things ever, abortion stuff. Well, abortion wasn't talked about as much until, at least that I remembered, until later. Um, and just theology and any of that stuff in general. I was raised in conservative fundamentalist churches, so I had all of those beliefs. And then just growing up and meeting people and reading about stuff and reading about hearing from people who study the Bible, that's their job, and about how they what are the common, like what are the most common thoughts about scripture from the majority of people who study the Bible, as opposed to like my pastor in Parma, Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
who, maybe went to seminary at the church school
Mm-hmm.
that would have taught to be a pastor in that church,
Yeah.
right? And then hearing that there are people who this is their job having differences of opinions about these basic things I thought were basic,
Mm-hmm.
that was interesting. That's kind of in, like, even with science, right? Where just assumed that I just assumed based on what I learned in church and in my communities that there was a real debate about evolution in science circles. And the truth is there isn't. Like there's like 99% of all scientists take that as a fact, evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And the only real debate is between a very small portion of people, very small, who a lot aren't even scientists. They're theologians,
Yeah.
or whatever, or if they are, they're in a very rare minority of scientists who think that way. So same with theologians, like there is common thoughts about how to read certain scripture, how what did all scripture is translated to us. Like it's all like everything we learned, like someone read scripture and formulated ideas based on that scripture and then taught it to someone who taught it to another person, and then maybe that person read some more and said, "Oh, I think I agree there, but I disagree here." That's why we have like four different end time theologies. Like
Mm.
there's pre,
Pre-mill,
post,
post-mill.
all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like there, Revelations at one like during the conversations of whether to even include it, there almost wasn't even included
Mm-hmm.
in the scripture. Like so, there's always debates happening, and so to in my mind to assume that we have it correct now and we finally got it right now seems weird. And my sort of feeling is like I'm willing to err on the side of love and inclusion, rather than be wrong and exclude people.
Mm.
So that's kind of, this is obviously referencing affirming gay relationships and Christians and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I would rather be wrong and include than be wrong and exclude, because one of us is wrong, right? So
would
that's
you would
yeah.
you let me like formulate this question right, would you,
Yeah.
because to me like being right or wrong, or taking a position
Yeah.
on the issue of just like homosexuality, for example,
Yeah.
taking a position that puts me in a place of someone else or myself, whatever,
Yeah.
being right or wrong about it,
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily lend itself to exclusion in my mind. To me,
Yeah.
it lends itself to what I would define and categorize as a continued work in that individual's life as God works on that person's heart to
Yeah.
bring about conviction,
Yeah, sure.
confession,
So, but
change.
if
And
what
so,
I mean by exclusion is typically like one would be the most extreme, which is if you are gay, then you can't be saved, right? That to me is like the most extreme, right? The other would be, then the next level would be like, well, that you can't really be at our church, and maybe
mm,
that's more extreme than the
yeah,
salvation, right? That's
yeah, I
probably
think
that one,
that
right?
to me that I
That's
would
the
I would
so we'll
also
swap
consider
those,
that
right?
extreme. Yeah.
So then the next level would be, well, we're okay that you're here, but you can't get baptized. And then maybe the next level would be, well, you can be baptized, and we just acknowledge that you're working on this thing, but you could not be in any leadership. You couldn't help. You couldn't be part of missions. Like those are all exclusionary in some way, even though they could include, you know. But if the point is to say this person that you are is wrong, in a sense, that's always going to be exclusionary to some point, and
Would
it's going
you
to make
would
someone
you
feel a certain way.
I'm tracking with you. I
Yeah.
guess, like, to me, it's no different than any other system in the world that we navigate, right? So let's
Yeah.
just say you're in corporate America and there is a certain job position that you're gunning for and it has a certain function and title. And
Yeah.
they're like, hey, well, in for this, let's just, Bank of America. They say,
Yeah.
hey, if you want to be, a banker or you want to be, a loan officer, these are the prerequisites and
Yeah.
the qualifying, you know, attributes or skill set that you would have to have in
Yeah.
order to qualify for the job and to be operating, serving, in that function. It to me, it's like, okay, I don't think that the church, based on those convictions, would be uniquely exclusionary.
No,
I
I
think that
think,
it's a
and I
part of
think
kind of
it's,
the world that we live in, where it's like, yo, if you don't meet certain,
yeah.
not to say like attending,
Yeah.
being a part of the fellowship, being among the fellowship,
Yeah.
that to that end, where it's like, yo, you can't be. That's exclusionary to me. I
Yeah.
don't think that
Well,
really best
I think it's,
exemplifies the heart of God. But like
yeah.
teaching, preaching, serving, leading out, like, oh, that is exclusionary, but it's one that's not,
So I think that, um, so I think that, first of all, if a church does not affirm gay people and doesn't want them to be in their leadership, like I'm absolutely okay with that. Like this is America, freedom of speech, whatever. Like they should be able to do that. I think they should be up front, like to say things like "come as you are," but as soon as you get here, you have to change this specific thing about you, but everything else can be worked out. Like that's what I often notice is it's like if you're gay, that's like, oh, there's no negotiating that. But like if
Okay.
you're like living, like let's say if you're living with your partner and you're not married,
Yeah.
like I don't like I've seen people lead who are in those situations.
Yeah.
Or they're getting divorced, and I mean Jesus spoke pretty strongly against divorce, right?
Yeah,
Like I'm
yeah.
not like, whatever, but like, and then to be like, oh well, like the church I grew up in, like if you were divorced, you couldn't be the pastor. Like you just weren't a pastor.
Yeah.
Or you couldn't get remarried. Like that was it.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, that was the ultimate version of that. So I'm saying like, I just think it's interesting that people oftentimes put a lot of emphasis on the homosexuality as being almost a greater quote unquote sin than anything else.
Yeah. No, and so I feel like I rock with you there for sure because this is something that I'll tell you this. I this is a lot. This is has a great deal of what informs how I have had relationships with those who have had same sex attraction
Mm-hmm.
openly as a believer.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that I learned through proximity and relationship, not to make exclusive as a sin that is outside of the realm of opposite sex attraction, lust, the P word, with all that stuff, right? Because I had a friend of mine where, well, I was locked up for a while, and I've kind of told my story a little bit. And so I had a buddy of mine. We did some time together, and I won't say his name. And we're not close anymore, but not because of anything like personal, like the distance. They just
sure.
live like across
Normal
the country.
stuff,
Yeah. But when we were locked up together, like I know this dude, for as much as I can, loves Jesus.
Yeah.
We're in chapel together.
Yeah.
We're in the same Bible studies together. We are in the same prayer groups together. We're crying out to God together. And this was my experience. Like this was the first time in my life where I had direct eye-to-eye conversations where him and I, like, he allowed me to ask him
Yeah.
questions to unpack the desires of his heart.
Right. Yeah.
Where because of that, I was able to really I've had two experiences like this where it's like, yo, I get to know this person.
Mm-hmm.
I get to know what the longings of the contradictory longings of their heart,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like they long for Jesus and the idea of Jesus that they have based on the scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is a contrary desire that what I believe about the scriptures pulls them in a different direction from Jesus.
Yeah.
And both of those things exist in the same person.
Mm-hmm.
And now that humanizes how I feel about this.
Yeah.
And I think that what that did for me, in a very similar way as what it did in terms of my conceptions about white people,
Yeah.
it made me be like, I know, not just I know, like I have a relationship with someone who is wrestling with this, and I know it's not as cut and dry. My experience now, and then I can correlate that to my own sinfulness and my own desires that are different from that sin, but still pull me in a different direction. You know, like that same duplicity lives inside of me. It's just a different object and a different thing that's pulling me away from the longing that I have for Jesus based on these. And I'm like, you know what? You and I wrestles aren't very different.
So
It's just the object of what is pulling me is different from what's but it's fundamentally it's the same process of like heart, the duplicity of desires, the like when the Bible says flee from youthful lust that war against the soul. It's like, yo, same war, different platoons.
And like how you're talking is literally how I talked, like, I don't know,
But let me say
8
this.
years ago.
Okay.
Like this is newer for me to be affirming, right? I have always, like, for a long time I was like, thought I was definitely like, this is sinful, you shouldn't be gay, any of this sort of stuff, you should fight against it. But I always was like, well, but I don't vote against it. I think people should be able to get married if they're gay. Like, I was like, I wanted all the same rights for gay people. Like, I was always politically aligned with gay people. It was just, I just felt it was sinful.
Mm-hmm.
And now the only difference is that I just not sure about that anymore. And I'm not
that is
and
not sinful.
yeah, like I don't I don't care about it enough that I would rather someone would feel free to be gay and also feel free to come to church and worship and serve and do all this stuff and, like, get close to God. And then if God says to them, you need to not be gay anymore, then that's what it comes to.
Mm-hmm.
But I would rather them come and find out than to be on the outside all the time.
Do you think that the lack of tension that could be caused by this,
That they would not, that they wouldn't feel any change? Well, in my opinion, because you could harden your heart, right? Is that what you mean?
So just to even finish, I thought, like,
Okay.
you have diabetes.
Yeah.
Now my wife cooked like a seafood pasta here.
Yeah.
If you were like, yo, it's really in my heart, like I want that, and I was like, oh yeah, bro, go for it. That to me would be
you're encouraging me to eat unhealthy stuff.
Not only encouraging, but willfully accepting the fact, even though I know that condition that you express. I'm like, to me, that would be a form of lesser love.
Of course.
Because I think love would say, no, bro, I know that's what you want,
Of course.
but like,
And they would
nah,
feel that, like, if I
yeah,
encourage someone to steal from the poor, right? Like, if
mm-hmm,
I encourage that, and I was like, just do it this time. Who cares? You
mm-hmm.
can ask for forgiveness or whatever. Like, like,
Vis-a-vis Brett Favre.
yeah, exactly. Like, if I just did something like that, like, and then I was just like, like it, like, yeah. But the difference is since I don't see it as a sin. Now, people can have sinful full behavior as a gay person, the same way that straight people have sinful behavior when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to sex or whatever,
Yeah.
and the selfishness of that sin, which to me, like, selfishness is the root of that sin, rather than, I don't know, I haven't fleshed all this out, but that's, in my
No,
opinion, like, the
I'm tracking with you
selfishness
though.
is like kind of the root of a lot, like a lot of sins, so since I don't see being gay as a sin or having a loving relationship, like getting married, like my brother's gay. He's been in a relationship with his fiance for I don't even know how long.
Yeah.
And the only reason why they haven't got married, I don't know. Sorry, Jerry or Jared, if you're watching this, but I assume it's because it's just not an easy proposition to get married in America, although it is easier now than it ever was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but like, I don't see that as a sinful thing. Like, I see rape as sinful. Because you're forcing sex on someone and abusing them.
Yeah.
I see, like, marital abuse as sinful. When it comes to, like, and marital rape, obviously, and date rape, or any rape, all the levels of rape. I see pedophilia as sinful. Again, a structure, a power. It's like really these are all power structures, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone asserting their power over someone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who does not want it. All of these things are sinful, and they're all based on power and selfishness,
And
but
harm being inflicted on someone else.
right?
Yeah.
But I don't see a loving relationship in that same light. Now, maybe God does. Maybe He does. I don't necessarily believe that the ancient writers, they didn't really have a concept of a loving gay relationship. It was about power structures back then. There were plenty of, like, man boy situations that were just part of Roman society, or whatever the sorts of things that were going on, that was definitely being talked about. Like, there was no concept of, like, two gay people getting married
Gotcha.
and loving and living and having a family together, or whatever. So, like, I don't necessarily believe that they would even know to talk about it or think about it in those terms. I mean, everyone in the old times have conservative ideas about a lot of stuff, so maybe they would, if they knew, maybe they would say, oh no, that was sinful. I don't know. Or maybe God would tell them to. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's not addressed that way in the Bible. It's only addressed when it comes to, like, sex and stuff like that. So those are all the kinds of reasons why I'm like, but again, like, it all comes down to, like, my heart is that everyone gets to experience Jesus without any obstacles. And if that means we have to accept people that we don't want to accept, then I'm ready to accept them.
I'm with you, man. And this is, why I always just kind of, we've had far kind of more in depth than just this, and so I always just appreciate just the dialogue about very intimate and real matters of the heart, and real life people that have real life implications for their life, not only in the here and now, but based on at least what I believe, in the by and by as well. I guess the only thing, like, because I definitely hear you, and
Let me say this. Let me just say this. Like, what I always try to, with people I disagree on issues, politically, religious, any issue, like, what is the heart behind the issue, right? Like, when someone doesn't want to feed the poor,
mm-hmm,
is it because they're saying, I shouldn't have to feed the poor? Or are they saying, I think if you give food to the poor directly without giving them jobs or whatever, that
mm-hmm.
it makes it worse for them? I can get behind the understanding. I disagree. I think the facts speak to just giving people money and food. That is, the science is there on that.
Mm-hmm.
But if your heart is no, I want I want poor people to be lifted up. I just think if you give them stuff, that's not the way to do it, right? I think like I can disagree. We can disagree on that if that's where your heart is. If your heart for gay people is that you do think it's inhibiting them from experiencing God 100%, I sympathize with that heart. And my heart is when we exclude them, like I think that's inhibiting them. We have the same heart. It's just we disagree about how to play that out, and that's what I'm looking for is the common ground on our hearts
Yeah.
with everyone. It comes with like with abortion, with any issue that
Yeah.
that anyone disagrees on. Is our heart in the same place? If we can get to that point, then I think we can have a lot of great discussions about this stuff because then no one's accusing someone of malice.
And that's where I've always sensed where your heart is, which is why I've always been open to having these conversations with you. You know, for me, um, I think using human harm as a metric for sin, it's not that it's not a quality metric to use. To me, it's just a secondary one, right?
Yeah.
And so when we because when you look at like one thing I've learned is like, especially talking with unbelievers, to use the Bible to substantiate a point when they don't believe in the Bible. And I'm not saying that's you. I'm
Yeah,
just saying,
right.
like, it's like, yo, it's a moot point because you're trying to make a point based on a benchmark that we're not even starting at the same place for you to make
I
the
think
point.
when people do that, they're
So
trying to use it against you. And I don't necessarily agree or disagree, but I think that's the intention. It's like, you don't believe in this. Why do you care? If someone were to say that, I've had people that used to be Christians who are now atheists
hmm
try to say what I think is sinful.
hmm
And I'm like, guy, like you don't get to judge what's sinful anymore. You don't believe in sin.
yeah, you can't
So
even
why would
use
you?
yeah, you can't weaponize my book.
Yeah.
You don't even believe in the book
I
if
mean,
I'm trying to make a
you
point.
can point to it and
Yeah.
say, but I get to say, well, I disagree with your view of it or whatever. You know?
And so when we look at Psalms 51, right, where David is repentant over his sin with Bathsheba, where he then of course has a child by her. He sends her then husband to the front line
Yeah,
to be murdered
murders
and
him
all of that,
basically. Yeah.
right? And so now the human rationale is like, this guy has stolen someone's wife. He used power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those power dynamics to steal someone's wife, impregnate her, and then send her husband. Basically, it's murder, by
Mm-hmm.
proxy. And in all of that, all of the human metrics in place, this guy has done harm, right? And then when you get to, I believe it's maybe verse 12 or 11 or 12 or something like that, where he's confessing and repenting to God, he says something that's wild, where he's like, against you and you only have I sinned, right? Let me finish the point.
Which I don't
Let me jump and let me
believe him.
finish
I don't
my
agree
point.
with
Let me
him.
finish my
Yeah.
point. Which is like, so now
Yeah.
we're talking about how sinfulness is being quantified and measured when you
Yeah.
think about, a stolen wife, a child that eventually ends up dying,
Mm-hmm.
a dude that dies on the battlefield by a plot, and then through what I believe is the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, David says, Lord, with all of these things, human harm has been inflicted, but because you are the one who has given the commandments in how we are to orient our lives in a way that pleases you, it doesn't negate the fact that my actions do or do not cause human harm, right? Because there are things that that actions that can be taken where it's like, yo, no human harm is being done, but that God has set kind of like a plumb line in place that says, hey, that transgresses on the lines that I in eternity, based on his standards, based on who he is, that I've set, where it's like, you know what, I may not be on its face causing apparent evident harm to another human by this loving relationship or termination of life to someone who maybe doesn't have a consciousness or whatever the case may be, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when God has set these things in place, like, yo, I am chiefly transgressing against you.
But do you
And
think that
human harm is a secondary metric by which then I can quantify the effects of my sin
well that's what
in
I
the earth.
but that's why I think that what is um like the amount of sins that you can do that is only harmful to God, right? Is very small, right? Is
I don't
one,
know.
really, in my opinion, and that would be if you worshipped another god or something, right? Like, because like, who cares if I worship another god? Like, why would you care necessarily? It doesn't hurt you,
Mm.
but God would care about that, right? Like that to me seems to be like the main one, but like, it's hard to think about another sin that the Bible talks about that doesn't negatively impact someone, you know?
Mm-hmm.
um and it's hard for me to um like because even when it's talking about homosexuality, it's typically talking about like these structures, these these structures where someone is being manipulated or exploited at some point,
Mm.
right? Like, or so that's my question, is like, where what sins actually are solely only, they do not have any harm towards you. I've always looked at like all of the instructions, like even the ones I thought were silly, that like I was like, why do the Christians have to do this? Or like, why do we make us do this? You know, as you grow up, you know, you have all these thoughts. But like I can point to reasons why these things have issues. You know, like even something with like premarital sex or whatever, that can have tons of issues, emotional issues, you know, teenage pregnancy, like unwanted pregnancies, like all kind affairs, like all kinds of stuff can stem from that. Um, so I understand why someone might try to create guidelines around, you know, heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So it's hard, like it's hard to see how two people in a loving, committed relationship, the only difference is that they're not straight.
Or of opposite sex.
But no, I mean, what I mean is, that's what I mean by that. Like
Yeah.
that's the only difference between your relationship with Steph
Mm-hmm.
and say my brother's relationship with Jerry, his
Yeah.
fiance, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That you guys are both in loving relationships. Um, there is no difference there that I can see, you know, that isn't like, you know, how people treat each other or whatever, you know, like those are all things, whatever. But you know what I mean? Like, I just don't see that. I don't know. It's not clear enough to me to be so strong about it that someone would actually feel rejected by my faith as a result.
I understand it. I understand what you're saying. Understand what you're saying. I mean, we definitely disagree, but I do
Yeah.
understand what you're saying, and I get the
Yeah.
train of thought that you have behind it. And so, you know, we'll kind of we'll put a pin in it there, man. Listen,
Yeah.
bro, I always appreciate just the dialogue. You know,
Of
you and
course.
I have had, you know, much more spirited
Yeah.
conversations.
Like in
So
Best
this,
Buy parking
yeah,
lot.
so this was really, really cordial and really
I guess we
gracious.
just needed like a nice comfy couch.
Yeah, that's what it is. Because we were standing up after about like 45 minutes, my feet were starting to burn. And not only was I like disagreeing with you theologically, I was fatigued, and it was just a cocktail of because we were in Best Buy parking lot. I think like a few people walked past, and it was like, "Are those? What's up with those?" Like we were out there, like you know, really, really having like a really spirited conversation. So no, I understand your position. I mean, you know, ultimately, you know, I do believe that even if I'm not able, for whatever reason, to make the direct correlation between harm being inflicted,
Mhm.
you know, from one human to another, but that because God is God,
Mhm.
and that God, and then because I believe God is good,
Yeah.
that He has the best intentions for all human flourishing,
Yeah.
that like, yo, even if I don't get the quote unquote rules, I believe in your goodness, that the rules do have some benefit
Yeah.
for all
I respect
humanity.
that for sure.
And so
Yeah.
anyway, man, thank you once
Absolutely.
again, bro. Great conversation. Yo, there it is. Expert Human Podcast. Man, y'all clap it up for my boy in the comments. This was just a great conversation, man. And I know I told you off camera that I want you back, and I'm definitely want not just talk all this heavy stuff. I just like your view on a lot of different things. And so listen, you all.
And let me just really quickly, Pastor Greg, I do not teach this stuff to the youth when I hang out. If they ask me about these things, I give the church line and I ask them.
Wow.
I tell them what our church teaches. Okay.
Wow. You know what?
I'm
Hey,
respectful. I'm respectful of.
Hey, I'm glad
church.
you said that. I mean, I wouldn't even think of that. But it's appropriate. And so shout out to Pastor Greg and
Anthony and Pastor Anthony.
Yeah.
And Anthony as well,
And so shout out to you guys. But that's actually really funny because you know what? In all, like even with my pastor, I was like, hey man, I'm gonna say some stuff on this show. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm gonna be me. And so I respect that. So anyway, this is good stuff. All right, man. Listen, make sure you guys like, you subscribe, sub the channel. I'm trying to get to 100 subscribers by the end of the year. I think we're like halfway there. Last time I checked, it was like 40 something or something like that. So subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications. This show exists to enlighten, educate, and empower every human being to be the expert version of themselves. And so, if you are with that, geez, I burped at the wrong time because it was a real fluid line. I'm going to say it again. This show exists to enlighten, educate, and empower every human being to be the expert version of themselves. If you rock with that, man, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you share this. Comment. Use the word for this week. Words for Nerds. Make a sentence in the comments. It is don't be commenting nothing that can be confused for conjecture. Let us know how you feel about the conversation. Go like and subscribe and follow my boy Nathan. He really is a really good follow on social media, kind of funny and witty and all that stuff. And his socials will be on the screen. And so, man, appreciate you guys. Until next week, peace.